Hi, I just recently watched two movies that really stuck with me. First one was About Time. Director Richard Curtis came out in 2013. It's an amazing movie. I can't believe I've never watched it before. The other movie that I just recently watched is called Dead Poets Society, director Peter Weir, and it came out in 1989. I'm shocked that I've never seen this one before. It was one of the best movies I think I've ever seen. If you haven't watched those two movies, please do because they were amazing. And those two movies got me thinking, what are some movies that have been life-changing for me or that I still think about all these years later? Because I feel like Dead Poets Society at least will be one of them for me. And that also got me thinking, oh, what are some books that I've read that have been life-changing for me? And then I remembered I actually have a list of some of the books that have been life-changing for me. And I thought I would share them with you because hello. And I thought I would share them with you because I enjoy book recommendations from other people and I'm more likely to read them if they also say that, hey, this book was life changing for me. So, yeah. Also, when I looked through my list, I realized that most of the books I put on there are talking about the meaning of life and the purpose of life. I guess that's my main topic. So the first one that I actually want to talk about is a short story and it's by F. Scott Fitzgerald and it's called The Rich Boy. It's like 20 pages less than that. I think everyone should read it at some point. I'm kind of afraid to reread it because what if the magic that I felt the first time isn't there anymore? So I haven't actually reread that. I should at some point. I mean, it's very short. What really stuck with me was the fact that, hey, we're only here for a certain period of time and we need to act on what we want and who we want to talk with and who we want to spend our time with. And it just follows this boy's life. And at the end of the day, I feel like the main emotion that I got out of this was that, oh, okay, this is loneliness. Yeah, just read it. I don't want to spoil it. And then I also have The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald on my list. Again, because I think it's the same message in all of these that really stuck with me is that you only have one life. You can't waste it. And at some point, you need to move on from your past and what does that mean and what does it mean when you can't. And also I really enjoyed The Great Gatsby because all of the characters in that book are not nice. Like I don't like any of them, but if you read it and really think about it from every character's perspective, then you kind of understand why are they acting the way they are acting. And I think it's also true in real life. Like you have all these people around you and maybe some of them don't act the way you want them to act or they don't make choices that you approve of, but when you look at those choices from their perspective, you can't assume that everyone's living the same experience as you are and everyone's consuming the media that you are consuming and so on and so on. Basically, Great Gatsby is about a rich person called Jay Gatsby and he is in love with Daisy Buchanan, and this is how Gatsby tries to get Daisy back in his life by first of all hosting all of these big parties, and then they meet again, and then the story follows or explains what happened with them the first time and what's happening now and all the other characters around them, like how are they affected by this one dynamic. Then the next book that I have on my list is If Cats Disappeared from the World by Genki Kawamura. This is Japanese fiction, talks about a guy who discovers that he's gonna die soon and then he meets a devil and he comes and says that, hey, you can live longer if every day that you live something that exists on the earth doesn't exist there anymore. I mean, that's the title, If Cats Disappear from the World. So like, for example, if movies disappear from the world, this book has stuck with me because I'm like, okay, all of these useless things that we have in our lives, maybe they are important to someone, you know. We all coexist together for some reason, and if one of the things that is existing right now now doesn't exist anymore, then the whole dynamic of everything else will change. And it again shows or talks about how precious life is. And I also enjoyed being in that character's head, because what happens to someone when you know that you're running out of time, and like what are the regrets that you have, and what are the dreams that you had, and you're like, oh, why did I never act on them, and can I do them last minute? So highly recommend. And I mean, Japanese literature overall. And I think I also enjoyed the devil aspect, because there's this book called Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov, and I think the character of Devil there is genuinely one of my favorite characters of all time in any book I've ever read. And yeah, okay, let's add Master and Margarita to this list as well, because I originally have not written it down, but I still think about that book, and I still reference it a lot. And also Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger wrote the song, or the Rolling Stones in general wrote the song, and that's like one of my all-time favorite songs, and it's inspired by Master Margarita, because Mick Jagger read that book before writing that song. Next on my list, I have 1984 by George Orwell. I think it's a very basic pick, but that's the reason why I went and studied political science as my bachelor's degree. And I reference that book, I think, almost every week, especially now when I talk about politics. It's very scary out there. It's just so brilliantly written, and all these terms, like for example, the Big Brother is watching, are from that book. And it made me think about authoritarian powers and just the power of a state in general, and how it literally actually impacts us every day and influences us every day. Yeah, just read it if you haven't. It's a classic for a reason. And then I also have a book on this list that's called My Pen is a Wing of a Bird, and it's fiction short stories by Afghan women. They are all anonymous, and they're just stories about everyday life. I mean, some of them are semi-magical realism based, and just it shows how deep inside almost everyone wants the same things in this world. Doesn't matter your religion, doesn't matter your cultural background, you just want to be safe, you just want to have your own place, you want to have your own community. And what does it mean when you don't have one of those things anymore? And especially I think after the conflict in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine started, this really just made me think that in a few years, short stories like those from My Pen is a Wing of a Bird could as well come out from Ukraine, or any state or any country that's having a hard time right now, and the civilians are suffering due to one conflict or another. So highly recommend everyone to read this. And then I was thinking, okay, what other books have really influenced me recently? And I know I read Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by Emily Austin in a vlog a few years ago. And I think it's one of my favorite books in general, because it's so funny and unserious. But there's this one quote that I referenced I don't know how many times in my life. And the quote is this: "If we discovered a dandelion on a planet besides Earth, that would be astounding. The fact that dandelions exist on our planet is therefore astounding." And it kind of, again, captures how weird and magical it is that we get to exist on this planet right now. We are literally on a rock in space, just floating. And at the end of the day, whatever we do doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. And we're all living these little lives. And I think in some ways we've become a bit numb to the fact that this is a miracle that we are here, and the fact that we have nature and all these incredible things on planet is astounding. So, and then another quote from a book that I mean, has changed my life kind of, is when Gandalf says to Frodo, all we have to decide is what to do with the time given to us. It's from The Fellowship of the Ring, and I mean, it's iconic, like the movie scene as well in Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. I've actually used it in a motivation letter before in my life, so, and I got into whatever I was applying for, so yeah, that was another amazing, life-changing moment in a book that I mean, I still think about. And I think maybe the last book to end this video with is Alice's Adventure in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. The themes in that book are like growing up, identity in general, and the absurdity of the adult world and what is expected of us. And I really, really, really enjoyed the part in the book where Alice wakes up and every day before breakfast, she thinks of 6 impossible things that could happen. I think the quote, like the actual quote was, why sometimes I think of 6 impossible things before breakfast, or I believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Anyways, incredible children's book and life-changing, to be honest. And I really did enjoy the characters and the designs and the illustrations in the book when I was growing up. So I don't know how to conclude this video. I think what I've learned about myself actually is that I really value books that try to give meaning to life, or also at the same time remind us how absurd the whole situation is, and that we are kind of insignificant in this world, and whatever we do in this world in the long run on a floating rock, it doesn't really matter, but everyone needs to find a purpose to exist. Also, speaking of other books that have really influenced me now, I finished Harari's Brief History of Humankind. That's wow. The quote from there, I posted this as my review of the book on Goodreads. I gave it 5 stars. It goes like this. We did not domesticate wheat. It domesticated us. The word domesticate comes from the Latin domus, which means house. Who's the one living in a house? Not the wheat. It's the sapiens. And I do think about that a lot. And just the way Harari called out some systems in this world. Yeah, lots to think about, and I will be referencing that book for a long time. Always read everything with a grain of salt, and I mean, of course, everything is biased in some way, but that's just how life is, because we all have different experiences, therefore we view things differently, and therefore we also have arguments and we have polarization. And okay, let's just not get into that right now. So those were the books that have genuinely in some ways changed my life. And please let me know if you have some. I hope you enjoyed this, and subscribe if you did like it, and I will hopefully see you soon. Bye.